All right, so this brings me to something else I want to talk about. Now, there is a lot. I'm skipping a lot in between, and I'm going ahead a little bit. But that's because as I was learning JavaScript, I was trying to go like step 1, step 2, step 3, and I was starting to get a little frustrated, right? You want to kind of see things happening not in the console log. You want to see them happening immediately in your page, right? You want to see how the page is affected. So one of the topics when you're working with JavaScript, and you'll see this in your book, if you jump ahead just a little bit and you go over to chapter 5, talks about the document object model and how you can access the different areas of the document. Okay, now I'll spend a little more time on this as we move on, but I do want to skip ahead to this. So remember earlier I was saying you have the window object, then you have the document object, and then you have all the elements inside. So the window object is window period, and then you have document period. It's like you're doing a drill down. Okay, you're going from the biggest object then down to the lowest object in your DOM. The window part, and I know I mentioned this last week, the window part of the statement is optional. Now, what if you want to get to the elements in your page? You use these, they're methods, which are functions. You can use any of these functions to get to different areas or elements in your page. The first one is by far the easiest and most common. It is get element by ID. That means create an element on your page and give it an ID. You guys know how to do that. Right? Like let's say you did a paragraph. Paragraph, ID, my paragraph, whatever you want to make it. So I want to go get that element. I can go after the ID I've created. I can specify the ID I've created. And now I've retrieved that element. Now I have it sitting in my JavaScript. What do you want to do with it now? Now you can do whatever you want with it. You can change CSS. You can change the text that appears in the paragraph, right? So there are all these things now that you have access to. And so I was about to point to an object that doesn't exist. So if you had this, right? Think about this. I have this right now, and I'm using JavaScript to go find this one. I found this. Now what do I want to do with it? You don't have to do it all in your HTML. What if you wanted to change some sort of CSS on it? You want to change the font color. You want to change the font size. You wanted to apply a hover, right? Now you can do that. All of the things that you could do with CSS, you can now do through JavaScript, right? So same applies to any of the concepts that are HTML related. The concepts that are HTML related, usually it's assigning an ID or assigning some, I don't see it on this page, content, right? The content, the text. Use your JavaScript to change the text. So let me show you how you would do that. Now, in this list, you have get element by ID, number 1. That's the easiest one because it's easy to understand. I have an ID. I'm going to go get my element with this ID. The other ones start to retrieve things sometimes in a list. So look at number 2. Number 2 says get elements, plural, by tag name. So a tag name, let's say, is an H1. So if you have many H1s, guess what? It's going to come back with all of the H1s in your page. So what are you going to do with that list? All right, so you have to think about how you're going to do this. Next is get elements, again plural, by their class name. Same thing. It's going to go out and find everything with one class and bring them all back in a list. Query selector all, same thing. It just meets a certain criteria and it will select all, whereas query selector will retrieve one in a list, matching a certain criteria. So I spend a little less time on the 4 and 5 just because oftentimes you have to know exactly what your selection is going to be. Like look at this example here. It uses the same selectors that we learned in CSS to go find the elements in your page. But let's try this first one, and I'll show you what I mean about modifying your content. Go back to your HTML and go up into the HTML portion. And I want you to create an element. It doesn't have to be an H1, H2, paragraph, whatever you want it to be. Let's do, I'll do an H2 just so it's bigger by default. I'm going to do H2 with an ID. Give it an ID. And let's make the ID total price or something like that, right? I don't want it to be the same. I'm going to call it total. Just call it total for now. And let's make it empty. Right? So it's an empty H2, but it does have an ID on it. Now, here, you're going to go out and get your document. Right? I'm going to find my document. Object first. Then, I'm going to call a function called getElement by ID. Open parentheses, close parentheses, semicolon. So some things you should notice about this statement. This is your object, dot. This is your function. This uses camel case, right? Lowercase letter for the first word, uppercase for the first letter of every word that follows. You are now accessing your HTML, right? You're now accessing your document. So what are you going to do with it? Well, the first thing is you have to specify which one. So take the ID that you created and put it in quotation marks inside of the parentheses. So I called mine total. Okay, so now it went out and found it. Now I want to do something with it. Now, if you spend some time in chapter 5, which I do recommend that you do, I won't assign it just yet, but I really do recommend that you start looking at the first couple of sections of this chapter, because it's going to tell you what you can do once you do retrieve that element. Right? And it's helpful to understand. So take a look at this example right here. This uses document dot get element by ID early languages. So go find it, right? Go find it. It finds it here, and it's this paragraph. And now it's just taking this statement and assigning this to a variable. Why does it do that? So you don't have to type that over and over and over again. All it is taking this and assigning it to a variable. Okay? Yes. Yes. Yes, it does. And notice that there's no quotation marks. There's no dynamic typing.
So do you have to, say for storing numbers, do you have to parse them when you're done with them every time?
You do. But it depends on what you're going to do with them. What you'll find a lot in HTML is that people use strings all the time. Right? You're using strings. The only time you're really using numbers is if you have to perform any sort of arithmetic. Stop thinking like a C++ coder, you know what I mean, type thing. That's what I've realized as I've been working with web development, is you have to stop thinking like the strict and structured way that that's so ingrained in us. This does a lot of the figuring out for you. And they do take these types of shortcuts all the time, where just create a variable that represents that whole string so you don't have to type it over again. Same thing happened here, right? It's just another variable that represents all of that so you don't have to type it over. Okay, this is interesting. And your question is for an advanced program, but I'm going to answer it because I like your question. So here's what would happen. In this case, it's going to go out and find everything that has a list item, right? So you got these 4 list items, it creates an array. It will automatically assign 0 to this list item, 1, 2, 3. You can then say first in list, last in list, because then there are array functions that exist that help you traverse an array.
So that's no longer, it's a string, it's an array of strings then?
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. And then everything I'm going to do with getElement by ID will apply also to all of those individual items that are in your array now. And it automatically creates the array, right? It just assumes it because it sees 4 things. It says, okay, I have to create a list, you know, because I've got 4 of them. But yeah, you can change the CSS, you can change the JavaScript, you can do all of that now. All right, so let's see. That brings me to, hold on, I just want to show it so that if you guys want to go reference it later, you know where it, right here. Right, so here's where, now what do I do with it? I've got this H2 in my example. What do I do with the H2? Well, you have these 2 things. You have text content and you have innerHTML. Now you can read through the detail of what each of these means. But very basically, now you can change content, right? You can change content. So I like to use innerHTML. The text content property, I think also, it has 2 things that it does. I think it also will change the tags with it, but don't quote me on that. That one, I just prefer using innerHTML. I know innerHTML is going to change content. That's all I have to reference is content. Okay, so let's do that right now. So now in our code, what we wrote, we have no content. I told you, leave it empty for right now. And right here, you're going to specify dot innerHTML. Don't get your syntax wrong. And you're going to set it equal to what? Whatever you want to do. You can do the total price is. Whoops, I didn't close this. Right, and now look at my syntax, how I did it, what I did. I'm using, oh, I think I used the wrong, right? Will it give me an error? I think it might. I think it wants these guys. I'm using the template literal in this example. I'm putting some string and a value. I can do that now. Right, so I performed a calculation. I came up with an answer. I took the answer, and now I'm sending it to this element. So the one thing you have to keep in mind is, remember that simple example I gave you of x equals 5, right? X equals 5, and I said all you're doing with x equals 5 is you're taking the number 5, and you're going out in memory, picture a little box. You just put the number 5 in a box called x. And I said on the left is the name. On the right is the number that goes in the box. Take a look at your statement. On the left is the object. On the right is the value you're putting into that object. Okay, so that's how you have to think of it. Format is the same. This little tiny statement of x equals 5 is exactly the same as this statement here. Right? It's the same thing that you're trying to accomplish. You're just doing it in a long, drawn-out way. All right, so save this and go look at your page. Look at it. And now, if you go to your developer tools, go to your elements, and notice that you have the content modified here. So what you just saw is how you can get to all of the different elements on your page and modify things about them. Now try modifying styling.